Hey, how are you? In this video, we will be talk about top 10 highest rated IMDb web series on Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime. Number 10, Foundation. The premise of the stories is that in the waning days of a future galactic empire, the mathematician Harry Seldon spends his life developing a theory of psychohistory, a new and effective mathematical sociology. Using statistical laws of mass action, it can predict the future of large populations. Seldon foresees the imminent fall of the empire, which encompasses the entire Milky Way and a dark age lasting 30,000 years before a second empire arises. Although the momentum of the empire's fall is too great to stop, Seldon devises a plan by which the onrushing mass of events must be deflected just a little, to eventually limit this interregnum to just 1,000 years. To implement his plan, Seldon creates the foundations. Two groups of scientists and engineers settled at opposite ends of the galaxy to preserve the spirit of science and civilization, and thus become the cornerstones of the new galactic empire. One key feature of Seldon's theory, which has proved influential in real-world social science, is the uncertainty principle of sociology. If a population gains knowledge of its predicted behavior, its self-aware collective actions become unpredictable. Number 9, The Wheel of Time. Set in a high fantasy world where magic exists, but only some can access it. A woman named Moiraine crosses paths with 5 young men and women. This sparks a dangerous world-spanning journey based on the book series by Robert Jordan. Number 8, The Nevers. The series is set in Victorian-era London and follows a group of people, mostly women, known as the Touch, who suddenly manifest abnormal abilities. Among them are Amalia, True, a mysterious and quick-fisted widow, and her best friend Pinance Adair, a brilliant inventor. The series received a straight-to-series order from HBO in June 2018 after a bidding war with other networks and streaming services including Netflix. Laura Donnelly was the first actress to join the series in April 2019, with the rest of the cast joining in July 2019. Writers Jane Espenson and Douglas Petrie, who worked with Whedon on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel and Firefly, also joined the series. Filming started at London in July 2019, but production was shut down in spring 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with only 5 complete episodes. Filming resumed in September and production was completed by October. In November 2020, Whedon was announced to be exiting the series, with Philippa Goslet being hired in January to replace him as showrunner. The series premiere received mixed reviews from critics, who praised the performances from the cast and production design but criticized the writing, with many deeming it overstuffed and muddled. The episode was watched by 0.548 million household viewers. Despite this, the show scored the best debut for a new original series on HBO Max. Number 7, C. Far in a dystopian future, the human race has lost the sense of sight, and society has had to find new ways to interact, build, hunt, and to survive. All of that is challenged when a set of twins are born with sight. In the early 21st century, a virus wiped out all human beings, but some who survived lost their sense of sight. C takes place several centuries later, where society has found new ways to socially interact, build, hunt, and survive without vision. Number 6, Shadow and Bone. From the Leigh Bardugo book of the same name, first of the Grisha trilogy, Alina Starkov and Malin Oretsev are both orphans who grew up together and are inseparable friends. They both serve in the first army of Ravka. When Malin is assigned to a ship that's to cross the fold, a dark barren strip of land inhabited by monsters, separating Ravka in two. Alina, in fear of being separated from her friend gets her way into the ship. The monsters Volcra attack, and while saving Mal, Alina displays a Grisha talent. The Grisha are people who possess the ability to manipulate the elements and people. It turns out Alina can conjure light, which is an ability thought to be the stuff of legends. General Kirigan, leader of the second army comprised of Grisha, upon confirming Alina's power, rushes her to the capital to present her to the court and start her training. She struggles to fit in and has difficulty accepting her new role as the proclaimed savior of the country. But mostly she misses Mel. She is manipulated into thinking that he gave up on her. As the feeling of abandonment sinks in, her powers grow. She begins flirting with Kirigan, but soon learns of his dark past. It's revealed to her by her tutor Bagra that Kirigan is in fact the centuries-old black heretic who created Conjure the Fold, and with her power he intends to use it as a weapon to conquer the world. She must flee with the general and his cronies on her heels. She encounters the Crows, a small crew of carrier criminals who are on a job to kidnap her. Escaping them, she finally meets up with Mal, who tracked her from the palace. They decide to go far north to hunt the magic stag from Alina's recurring dream, one of the mythical creatures said to amplify the powers of whomever kills it. Eventually, they find the stag, but Alina refuses to kill it. Kirigan appears, kills the stag, and by melding a piece of its antler into Alina and a bone of it into himself, he gains control of her power. They return south to cross the fold. The Crows, having failed their job and realizing that Alina is far more important than all the money in the world, they decide to cut their losses and return home. They hitch a ride on the very ship. Alina, Mal, and Kirigan are on Alina's force to protect the ship during the crossing as Kirigan extend the fold, causing great destruction. The Crows happen upon Mal, who stored away on the ship. Making a pact, they decide to free Alina and take down Kirigan in the process. A fight ensues. Mal throws Kirigan off the ship to be devoured by the Volcra. Alina stops the fold from expanding and they all make the crossing. The Crows impart their street smarts to Alina and Mal, since they are now the two most wanted people in the world. They all board a ship under false identities and plot their next move. Number 5. The Terror, supernatural semi-historical horror anthology series where each season is inspired by a different infamous or mysterious real-life historical tragedy. Season 1 is based on the tragic event known in British history as Franklin's Lost Expedition in 1848. Two real-life warships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, sent on a Royal Naval expedition to find the treacherous Northwest Passage, become trapped in ice near Arctic and face starvation, mutiny, cannibalism, and an demonic polar bear inspired by the Inuit. Turngate myth, season 2, based on the real-life internment of Japanese Americans in the United States during World War II, is titled Infamy and follows a Japanese American investigating supernatural attacks in the LA-based Terminal Island camp, possibly committed by a phantom from Japanese folklore known as Bakemono or shapeshifter, all the while facing abuse, obstruction, and skepticism from the US officers running the camp. Number 4. The Sinner, anthology series that examines how and why ordinary people commit brutal crimes. The Sinner follows a young mother who, when overcome an inexplicable fit of rage, commits a startling act of violence and, to her horror, has no idea why. The event launches an inverted and utterly surprising crime thriller whose driving force is not the who or the what but the why, as an investigator finds himself obsessed with uncovering the woman's buried motive. Together they travel a harrowing journey into the depths of her psyche and the violent secrets hidden in her past. Number 3. Only Murders in the Building follows three strangers, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, who share an obsession with true crime and suddenly find themselves wrapped up in one when a grisly death occurs inside their exclusive Upper West Side apartment building. The trio suspects murder and employs their precise knowledge of true crime to investigate the truth as they record a podcast of their own to document the case. The three unravel the complex secrets of the building with stretch back years. Perhaps even more explosive are the lies they tell one another. Soon, the endangered trio comes to realize a killer might be living amongst them as they race to decipher the mounting clues before it's too late. Number 2. Warriors. In the near future, a charismatic leader summons the street gangs of New York City in a bid to take it over. When he is killed, the Warriors are falsely blamed and now must fight their way home while every other gang is hunting them down. Cyrus, the leader of the most powerful gang in New York City, the Gramercy Reefs, calls a midnight summit for all the area gangs, with all asked to spend 9 unarmed representatives for the conclave. A gang called the Warriors are blamed for killing Cyrus as he gives his speech. They now have to cross the territory of rivals in order to get to their own hood. The Warriors slowly cross the dangerous Bronx and Manhattan territories, narrowly escaping police and other gangs every step of the way. In a near future, Cyrus is a respected leader that intends to unite the gangs in New York. Cyrus invites the most relevant gangs for a meeting at the Central Park, a neutral turf. In a moment of truce, he explains that if the gangs unite, there would be 60,000 members against 20,000 policemen and they could rule New York. Out of the blue, the punk Luther shoots Cyrus and blames the Warriors, a gang from Coney Island. There is a riot in the Central Park and the police arrive and put the group under siege. The Warriors try to return to Coney Island while all the gangs decide to hunt them down. The long journey back home of the Warriors begins. Number 1. What Do We Do in Shadow? A documentary crew follows 4 vampire housemates, Viago, Vladislav, Deacon, and Peter, who share a flat in the Wellington suburb of TRO. All of the vampires possesses supernatural powers, including levitation and the ability to transform into animals. Viago is a 379-year-old dandy from the 17th century, who originally traveled to New Zealand in the 1910s in search of Catherine, the love of his life. Vladislav is an 862-year-old known as Vladislav the Poker, who is haunted by memories of the nemesis the Beast, and Deacon is a 183-year-old former peddler and the young rebel of the group who was turned into a vampire by Peter, a repulsive 8,000-year-old vampire who behaves like a feral animal. Each night, Viago, Vladislav, and Deacon take the bus into town and prowl the streets of Wellington for people to kill. Deacon's human familiar Jackie errands for the vampires and cleans up the gore left behind by their feeding. A married mother, Jackie hopes to attain immortality but is frustrated that Deacon will now turn her into a vampire as promised. Deacon requests that Jackie bring virgins to the flat so that the vampires can feed on them. She lures a woman who insulted her in primary school and her ex-boyfriend Nick to the flat. Thus, neither are actually virgins. The woman is killed and Nick is chased throughout the flat and manages to get outside, only to be caught by Peter, who turns him into a vampire. 2 months later, the vampires accept Nick into their group and bond with his human friend Stu, a computer analyst who introduces them to modern technology. Viago uses the internet to find Catherine, who is now a 96-year-old widow living in a rest home in Wellington, and also briefly reconnects with his old servant Philip. Despite being able to get his new friends into popular bars and clubs, Nick struggles to adapt to life as a vampire. Nick is also held in contempt by Deacon, who resents Nick's newfound popularity and his careless revealing of his vampirism to strangers he meets. One of these strangers, a vampire hunter, breaks into the flat basement during the day and kills Peter by exposing him to sunlight. The vampire vampires are furious when they discover Nick has indirectly caused Peter's death, and Deacon tries to kill Nick before being interrupted by a police welfare check, but Viago hypnotizes them into not noticing anything out of the ordinary. Once the police leave, Nick is banished from the flat by the remaining vampires. Thaf too is permitted to come as he pleases. Several months later, the vampires receive an invitation to the annual Unholy Masquerade hosted for the local undead population of vampires, zombies and witches. Vladislav refuses to attend after learning that the beast will be the guest of honor. When Viago and Deacon arrive at the ball, they find in attendance Nick, Stu and Jackie. The latter of whom has been turned into a vampire by Nick. The beast is revealed to be Vladislav's ex-girlfriend Pauline, and when Stu and the camera crew are discovered to be living humans, the party guests threaten to kill and feed on them. Vladislav arrives and fights with Pauline's new boyfriend Julian. Stu impales Julian on a flagpole, and the vampires and camera crew escape the ball with him, only to encounter a rival pack of werewolves who transform under the full moon. Stu and one of the cameramen are mauled. Believing Stu to be dead, the vampires run away and grieve for him. After an indeterminate amount of time, Nick returns to the flat with Stu, who reveals he has survived the attack and transformed into a werewolf. With Stu's urging, the pack visits the vampires along with Stu, and Nick's banishment is rescinded as well. Thaf, momentarily apprehensive, Deacon invites the werewolf pack inside. Viago also reconnects and rekindles his romance with Catherine, whom he turns into a vampire. Scenes during the credits reveal that Vladislav has gotten back together with Pauline, repeating his cycle of self-inflicted torture over his relationship with her, and Jackie's husband is now serving as her familiar. A post-credits scene shows Deacon attempting to hypnotize the audience to forget the events of the film.